She walked into that restaurant with nothing. No money, no home, no dignity, just a box of handmade soap and her son's hand in hers. Seconds later, she was humiliated, thrown out like trash in front of strangers. But what no one expected was that one man would stand up. A billionaire, a stranger, someone who saw her when no one else did. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a story of quiet strength, second chances, and a love that defied every expectation. If you believe that dignity can't be bought, but must be honored, comment below. Respect is priceless. The wind cut through her thin jacket like glass. Her fingers, stiff and red from the cold, clung tightly to the small hand of her son, the only warmth she had left in the world. His tiny fingers curled into hers instinctively, like roots searching for soil. They sat on the edge of a busy sidewalk, invisible to the hurried feet of a city that didn't stop, not for hunger, not for pain. She tried to keep her back straight, to hold on to some fragment of dignity, even though her world had collapsed weeks ago. The father of her child had disappeared without a trace. He left behind more than silence. He left debt, betrayal, and a promise shattered like glass underfoot. At first, she had tried to hold things together, worked double shifts, skipped meals, borrowed time. But time ran out. The landlord's voice still echoed in her memory. "You have 1 hour. After that, I'm changing the lock." No pity, no hesitation, just business. She remembered standing on the doorstep with 2 trash bags full of their life, her son half asleep in her arms. That night, they found shelter under a bridge, her back against the concrete wall, his head on her lap. Even then, she refused to beg. But hunger does things to a soul. She found discarded soap remnants in a donation bin behind a shelter, half-used hotel bars, forgotten chunks. She melted them down over a makeshift flame, mixing them with drops of lavender oil someone had once gifted her. She made soap, not perfect, but clean, not fancy, but hers. Each bar was wrapped in recycled paper. She wrote little messages on them with a blue pen she'd found on the street. "You are strong. Hope lives here." People often passed her without seeing her. Others wrinkled their noses or clutched their bags tighter. She smiled anyway. She had to. Her son was watching. Some days she sold 2 bars, other days none. But she kept going. She told herself it was better than giving up. Then came the day her courage outweighed her fear. She stood across the street from a luxury restaurant, one of the kind where plates cost more than she made in a week. Her hands trembled as she looked down at her little box of soap, neatly arranged like jewels. "I just want one person," she whispered to herself. "One person to say yes." Her son tugged at her sleeve. "Are we going in, Mommy?" She nodded, heart hammering in her chest. "Yes, baby. We're going in." The moment she stepped through the polished glass doors, the world around her shifted. The warmth of the restaurant's interior struck her like a slap, not because of the temperature, but because of what it represented. Everything gleamed. Gold accents, velvet chairs, and crystal chandeliers spoke a language of wealth and privilege that she hadn't known in years, and perhaps never would again. She held her small box of soap close to her chest, the worn cardboard almost trembling in her hands. Her son clung to the edge of her coat, his wide brown eyes scanning the grand room with a mix of awe and fear. He didn't speak. She didn't either. Her throat felt tight, dry, and she could feel every pair of eyes on her as though she had walked in naked. Nobody said anything at first. The maitre d', a tall, thin man with silver hair and a perfect posture, looked up from his podium and frowned, eyes narrowing. She took a step forward. "Excuse me," she began softly, her voice barely carrying over the delicate clinking of fine cutlery and the gentle hum of conversation. "I'm not asking for money. I make these myself. Handmade soap. Just, if anyone would like to buy..." "Ma'am," the maitre d' interrupted sharply. The word cut through her like ice. "You cannot be here." She tried to smile, tried to keep her voice steady. "Please, I'm just trying to support my son. I made these. They're clean. They're wrapped. Just a few minutes." Several patrons had begun to look up from their tables. One woman with diamonds hanging from her ears whispered something to her companion and glanced away, clearly bothered by the interruption. A man in a navy blue suit scoffed, shaking his head. "Security!" the maitre d' said calmly, without looking away from her. "No, wait," she said quickly, instinctively stepping back. "I'll go. Before she could finish, two uniformed men appeared from behind a pillar. One reached for her arm. The other waved a hand toward the door. "We're not causing trouble," she protested, pulling her son behind her. "Please, just a moment." "Let's not make a scene," one guard muttered, as they guided her toward the exit. Her box of soap slipped from her hands. The crash was soft, barely audible, but in that silence, it sounded like thunder. The box hit the marble floor, and the soaps, all the little bars she had shaped and wrapped and prayed over, scattered like fallen petals. Some rolled toward the foot of a grand table where an elderly man watched silently. Another landed near the host podium. No one moved to help. Laughter. Just a short, cruel laugh from a young man sipping wine, dressed in a crisp blazer and arrogance. "Oh, God," she whispered, kneeling down quickly, trying to gather the soaps with shaking hands. Her son crouched beside her, trying to help. His eyes were wet, his cheeks flushed. A woman near the bar muttered, "This is unacceptable." Another said, "Why are they letting people like that in here?" The door opened behind her. Cold air rushed in as one guard reached for her shoulder again, and then someone spoke, a deep, calm voice, gentle but firm. "Stop." The guard froze. The maitre d' turned sharply, his polished smile faltering. At the far end of the room, near the window overlooking the city, a man had risen from his table. His suit was dark, expertly tailored, his tie loosened slightly as if he had grown tired of perfection. His skin was olive-toned, his jaw trimmed neatly with stubble, and his eyes, they were what stopped the room. They weren't cruel, they weren't mocking, they were curious. "I said stop," he repeated, stepping forward slowly. The guards hesitated, unsure. One of them let go of her arm. She stared up at the man, breath caught in her throat. "Sir, with all due respect, this woman is—" the maitre d' began. "She's not doing anything wrong," the man interrupted. "She's offering something she made with her own hands that deserves more dignity than what you're giving her." His voice didn't raise, but its weight made silence fall again. Even the diners stopped pretending not to watch. He crouched down, right there on the cold marble floor, and picked up one of the fallen soaps. He turned it over in his hand, examined the wrapping, simple, delicate, and read the handwritten words, "You are strong." He looked back at her. "Did you write this?" he asked. She nodded, unable to speak. Her throat ached from holding in everything, the shame, the hunger, the fatigue. "What's your name?" She cleared her throat. "Lena," she whispered. "And this is my son, Eli." He nodded slowly. Then he stood, still holding the soap, and turned to the maitre d'. "I'll cover her meal," he said, "and she stays. If anyone has a problem with that, they can leave." The maitre d' paled but nodded quickly. "Of course, Mr. Haddad." That name rang in Lena's ears. She had heard it before, maybe on the news, maybe in whispers on the street. Amir Haddad, the billionaire, real estate, tech, oil, something like that. He was on magazine covers, she remembered now. But here, in front of her, he didn't look untouchable. He looked human. He extended a hand to her. "May I?" She hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm, firm, steadying. He helped her to her feet. One of the guards bent down silently and began picking up the remaining soaps. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," Lena murmured. "I just thought maybe someone here would be interested. I wasn't begging, I swear." "I know," Amir said gently, "and I'm sorry they made you feel like you were." He looked down at Eli, who was staring up at him with cautious curiosity. Amir smiled and knelt again, offering the boy one of the soaps. "This smells better than anything they sell at the spa I go to," he said. "You helped your mom make these." Eli nodded, just once. "That's impressive," Amir said. "You're both impressive." Lena blinked fast, trying to keep her emotions in check. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, not without strings. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." She didn't answer, didn't know how to. Her heart was beating so fast it felt like it might leap from her chest. She wasn't sure what this was, a gesture, a passing kindness, or something else. Amir looked at her again. Not her clothes, not her dirt-stained shoes or frayed coat. He looked at her, the woman underneath. "Come," he said. "Sit, have dinner. You don't need to sell anything tonight." Lena hesitated. Everything in her told her to run. Pride, fear, habit. But then Eli looked at her, and he was smiling. For the first time in days, she nodded. Amir led them to his table, one of the finest in the restaurant, and signaled the waiter without a word. As they sat down, Lena felt the eyes still on her, but she didn't care. For a moment she wasn't on the outside, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she believed maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over. It was only beginning. She didn't trust him, not really. Not yet. There was something too perfect about him. His suit, his shoes, his smooth voice that never cracked, even when the situation had gone tense. It wasn't just his appearance. It was how he looked at her, how he didn't flinch at her torn coat or the dirt under her nails. That unsettled her more than the cold ever had. After dinner, which she barely touched, Amir offered to drive them somewhere warm. She hesitated. Her instincts screamed caution. No matter how generous he seemed, men always wanted something. She had learned that the hard way. But then there was Eli. Her son was already asleep, curled up against her on the velvet seat of the restaurant booth, his little face peaceful for the first time in days. If she said no, it meant another night on the street, another freezing dawn with nothing but empty wrappers and broken sleep. She didn't have the strength for that again, so, with a tight nod, she agreed. Amir didn't gloat. He didn't even smile. He simply helped her gather Eli into his arms and led them outside to a sleek black car parked under the glow of the restaurant lights. The driver opened the door without a word, and they climbed inside. Silence filled the space between them for most of the ride. Lena stared out the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of yellow and grey. Amir didn't press her with questions, though his eyes flicked toward her more than once. She could feel the questions beneath his gaze. Where had she come from? What had broken her? Why did she keep standing? She didn't want to explain. Not yet. They stopped in front of a tall building in a quiet neighborhood. Not flashy, not loud. The kind of place where the rich hid in plain sight. The elevator was silent as it rose, and when the doors opened, Amir led her to a unit at the very end of the hall. When he pushed the door open, the warmth inside greeted her like an old friend she'd almost forgotten. It wasn't what she expected. No marble, no cold metal, just soft colors, shelves lined with books, a few toys in a corner, and a faint scent of jasmine in the air. "This is your place?" she asked cautiously, stepping in. "No," he said simply. "It's a guest apartment. I keep it ready when family visits, or people who need it. People who need it." She swallowed hard. "I'm not charity," she muttered, her voice low, defensive. He didn't flinch. "I know. I'm not a case you want to feel good about." "I didn't say you were." Lena turned to look at him fully for the first time since they left the restaurant. Her eyes were sharp, guarded. "Why are you doing this?" His reply came softly. "Because someone once did it for me," she frowned. He continued, walking toward the kitchen and opening the fridge. "I was 10. My mother cleaned offices at night and sold candles during the day. When we lost our home, we stayed in the basement of a mosque. The imam, he had nothing either, but he gave us shelter, food, a chance." He turned back to her, offering a small carton of milk and some fruit from the fridge. "This isn't about guilt," or pity. It's just balance. I can help, so I do. Lena didn't know what to say. Her whole life had been one long list of debts and disappointments. This kind of help, quiet, no strings, didn't make sense. Still, she took the milk. She needed to feed her son. He pointed toward the hallway. There are 2 bedrooms. You can choose whichever you like. Clean sheets, warm showers. No one will bother you here. You're not staying. I'll be across the hall, he replied. You have my number. Call if you need anything. She looked around the room again. It was warm, quiet, safe, and that terrified her more than the street ever had, because safety was addictive, and she didn't know if she could survive losing it again. She didn't sleep much that first night. Eli did, curled up in a real bed, his small chest rising and falling in the rhythm of peace. But Lena sat by the window for hours, watching the city breathe, her heart heavy with gratitude and fear. What if it wasn't real? What if he changed? But Amir didn't change. Days passed, then weeks, and every day he showed up, sometimes just to check in, other times with supplies, groceries, or a quiet offer to take Eli to the park. He never pushed. He never asked about her past. He never looked at her the way other men had, like she was something broken to possess or fix. Instead, he asked questions about her soaps. What's in this one? Smells like lemon and something spicy. Clove, she replied once, surprised by his genuine interest. It's hard to get, but it sells fast when I have it. They're good, he said. Better than most boutique brands. She rolled her eyes. You're just being nice. No, I don't do fake compliments, he replied with a slight smirk. I have too much money to lie. That made her laugh, the first real laugh in months. It felt strange, foreign, beautiful. He introduced her to people quietly. A boutique owner who agreed to take 12 bars on consignment, a woman who ran a spa and wanted to place a small order. Lena worked late into the night, melting, mixing, wrapping. Her hands became strong again, her eyes less hollow. Eli thrived. He smiled more, talked more. He started drawing pictures of soap bars and labeling them Mommy's Business. It felt like hope, but something gnawed at her. Every time a new order came in, every time someone called to say they'd heard about her soap through a friend, she couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't real, that someone, maybe the man with the dark eyes and quiet presence, was pulling strings behind the scenes. She didn't want help she hadn't earned. So one afternoon, when Amir left his briefcase open on the kitchen counter during a visit, and she saw a stack of receipts tucked beneath his notebook, her hands moved before her brain did. One of the receipts bore the name of a buyer who had ordered 50 bars just last week. But the payment, it came from Amir, not the boutique, not the spa, him. She checked another, same pattern, and another. Her hands trembled. He had been buying her soap through fake customers, pretending they were sales, pretending people cared, pretending she mattered. The betrayal sliced through her like cold metal. That night, she didn't sleep, she didn't cry. She just packed. Not everything, just enough. Eli's clothes, her soap molds, the little bits she could carry. When dawn came, she left a note on the counter. Thank you for the shelter, but I can't live in a world where I'm pitied. And she walked out. Eli asked questions she didn't have answers for. Why aren't we staying? Why are we leaving? Did I do something wrong? No, baby, she whispered, holding his hand tight. You didn't do anything wrong. Mommy just needs to stand on her own. But every step away from that apartment felt heavier than the last. Not because of the comfort she was leaving behind, but because, somewhere deep down, she feared she was leaving behind something else. Something that wasn't pity, something she didn't know how to name. Yet, the bus smelled like rust and wet clothes. Lena sat in the far back, Eli curled up beside her with his head resting on her lap. Asleep once again, though she knew his dreams had changed. He used to dream of warmth, of light, of safety. Now she feared he might dream of losing those things. The city passed outside in a blur of concrete and traffic lights, and Lena couldn't stop replaying the moment in her mind. The receipts, the fake buyers, Amir's signature printed clearly, the numbers neatly lined up. He had tried to disguise them, perhaps hoping she would never notice, but she had. And now everything inside her felt like it had cracked down the middle. He had lied, not with words, but with silence. And that kind of betrayal was harder to forgive than any spoken one, because she had started to believe in him. She didn't have a plan, not really. They moved from place to place, shelter to shelter, using the small cash she had saved from real soap sales, few though they were. She kept working, melting, mixing, pouring. The scents were familiar now, like old friends, and they helped her feel like she hadn't lost everything. But sales slowed. Without the hidden help, without the invisible hand lifting her from behind, it became what it always had been: hard. There were days when she sold nothing. There were nights when she went hungry so Eli didn't have to. And still, she refused to call him. Pride had become her armor and her prison. Weeks passed. Then one afternoon, as she sat behind her stall at an open-air market, a woman approached. She was elegant, older, wearing a scarf of deep green silk and sunglasses too large for the overcast weather. She picked up one of the soaps and turned it in her gloved fingers. "This one is lovely," the woman said, her voice smooth and melodic. "Bergamot and cedar wood." Lena looked up, slightly surprised. Most people who passed her stall didn't even stop to sniff. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "It's one of my favorites." The woman smiled. "It smells like comfort and courage." Lena didn't know how to respond to that. The woman reached into her handbag, pulled out a small wallet, and paid without asking the price. "That's too much," Lena said quickly, trying to hand back part of the bill. But the woman shook her head. "I'm not paying for the soap," she said. "I'm paying for the strength it took to make it." Lena froze. The woman removed her sunglasses, revealing kind brown eyes, soft with something Lena hadn't seen in a long time: understanding. "You must be the girl Amir speaks of." Lena stiffened instantly, her hands closing around the edge of the table like she needed to hold herself down. "I'm not interested in anything he has to say," she muttered, eyes flashing with wounded pride. The woman gave her a patient look. "He hasn't said much, actually. That's not his way. But I'm his aunt, and I wanted to meet the woman who managed to shake him." Lena looked away, heart pounding. "I don't need pity," she said quietly. "This isn't pity, dear. This is truth." The woman sat on the small folding chair across from her, ignoring the odd looks of passers-by. Her scarf fluttered lightly in the breeze. "Do you know where Amir came from?" Lena didn't answer. "He was born in Michigan," the woman said, "but his parents were immigrants. His mother cleaned houses. His father worked in a car factory until he injured his back and could no longer lift. They lost everything when Amir was 13. Lena's eyes flicked toward the woman, her skepticism softening just slightly. "He started working young," the woman continued, "selling candles on the street. Not so different from you. He worked his way up, not by stepping over people, but by lifting others. That's who he is. But he doesn't talk about it. He doesn't like to be seen as vulnerable." Lena's jaw tightened. "Then why didn't he tell me?" "Because he thought you'd see it as manipulation, as if he was trying to say, 'We're the same, so you owe me trust.' He didn't want to cage you with sympathy. He wanted to give you space to fly." Lena's throat tightened. The woman reached across the table and took her hand gently. "Do you really think he paid those people because he didn't believe in your work? Or because he wanted you to think you were worth more than what strangers saw?" Tears stung Lena's eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. "I needed the truth," she said. "Yes," the woman agreed, "but sometimes kindness wears the face of lies, not to deceive, but to protect." They sat in silence for a moment. Then the woman rose, placed her sunglasses back on, and nodded with quiet grace. "He loves you, you know. I saw it in his eyes the day he found out you left. He wasn't angry. He wasn't hurt. He was broken." Lena looked down at the soap in her hands. The wrapping was smudged, the message barely visible now. "You are strong." After the woman left, Lena couldn't focus. Her heart beat too fast, her thoughts racing. She closed the stall early and walked through the city in circles, trying to outrun the truth that had finally caught up to her. He hadn't tried to save her because he thought she was weak. He had believed in her so much. He had created a world where she could believe too, even if it meant hiding his own role in it. That night, as she lay beside Eli in the shelter, she stared at the ceiling and whispered into the darkness, "Why didn't you just tell me?" But the darkness had no answer. The next morning, she stood in front of the mirror in the shared bathroom, combing Eli's hair as he ate the toast they'd managed to get from the kitchen downstairs. He was humming softly, a tune she didn't recognize, and for a moment Lena felt something shift inside her. A decision, not of weakness, but of courage. She wasn't going back to ask for help. She was going back to tell the truth, because she had finally seen what he had done, not out of pity, not out of control, but out of something deeper. Love. Not the kind written in fairy tales, but the kind that sacrifices pride for someone else's hope. She dressed Eli in his best clothes, still worn, but clean, and took his hand. "I have to make something right," she told him. He didn't ask questions. They walked across the city, retracing every step she had taken the night she left. Her feet hurt, her heart ached, but she didn't stop. Finally, they stood once more in front of the building she had sworn never to return to. The doorman recognized her, said nothing, simply gave a small nod and called the elevator. She stepped inside. Each floor passed like a heartbeat. When the doors opened, she walked down the familiar hallway, every step echoing with a mix of fear and clarity. She didn't know what she would say, only that she had to say something. She knocked. Once, twice. Silence. Then the door opened, and there he was. Amir, not in a suit, not in armor, just a man, tired, eyes shadowed, expression unreadable. He didn't speak, neither did she, not at first. Then softly, she held out a small wrapped bar of soap. "I made this last night," she said. "It's not perfect, but it's real." He took it from her hands, turning it slowly, carefully. "You didn't need to buy my soaps," she said. "You just needed to believe I could sell them." He looked up at her, pain flickering in his eyes. "I did believe," he said, "but I didn't think you would." Her throat tightened. "You made me believe, even if I didn't know it." He stepped aside. "Do you want to come in?" She hesitated for just a moment, then nodded and crossed the threshold, not as a woman needing rescue, but as someone ready to face what had been lost, and maybe, just maybe, what could still be found. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that echoed louder than it should have. Lena stood just inside the apartment, the weight of the silence between them as heavy as the air before a storm. Amir still hadn't moved far from the threshold. He held the bar of soap in his hand like it was something sacred, something fragile, something lost, and then found. She looked around. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The warm hues of the walls, the books still slightly uneven on the shelf, the soft scent of jasmine lingering in the air. It hadn't changed, but she had, and so had he. Eli broke the stillness first. He slipped past her legs and into the apartment like he'd never left, as if no time had passed at all. He walked straight to the small basket of toys Amir had bought for him weeks ago, still in the corner, untouched since their departure, and pulled out his favorite, a little wooden car with chipped red paint. "I missed this," he said softly. Lena's breath caught in her chest. Amir crouched, his eyes flicking to the boy, then back to Lena. "He can stay as long as he likes." Lena nodded slowly. "He never stopped talking about you." She folded her hands in front of her to stop them from trembling. The tension in her limbs had nothing to do with fear anymore. It was the weight of regret, of unsaid things, of pride that had tried to protect her, and instead had nearly cost her everything. "I didn't leave because I didn't care," she said, her voice quieter now, more vulnerable than she had allowed it to be in a long time. "I left because I thought you didn't believe in me." "I did," Amir replied gently, "but I knew you didn't believe in yourself yet, and I didn't want to push you. I just wanted to give you space to stand." She shook her head. "But you didn't give me space. You gave me the illusion of success. You bought my soaps. You created fake buyers. You built this dream with invisible hands and didn't tell me. I wasn't trying to control you, Lena. I was trying to give you momentum, hope, something to build on." She looked at him, eyes searching. "Why didn't you tell me about your past?" Amir's jaw tightened. He walked slowly toward the window, setting the soap carefully on a nearby table. Outside, the city lights flickered against the dusk sky. "Because I didn't want your sympathy," he said. "People see the wealth, the name, the suits, and they think I've never tasted struggle. I've swallowed hunger. I've begged for rent extensions. I've watched my mother fall asleep on the floor after double shifts." He turned back to her. "But I didn't want you to feel like I was telling you all that just to relate or to manipulate you. I wanted you to find your power on your own terms. And when I found it, it felt like a lie," she whispered. "I know," he replied. They stood there, two people shaped by survival, separated not by class or culture, but by wounds, deep, invisible, and unspoken. Eli's giggle echoed softly from the other room. The innocence in it cut through the tension, reminding them both of what mattered beyond pride and pain. "I hated you," Lena said suddenly, her voice cracking. "When I saw those receipts, I felt like I was some puppet you were moving around without strings. I thought—" She paused, then met his eyes. "I thought you didn't think I was enough." Amir stepped forward slowly, carefully, as if every inch was a test of trust. "I've never met anyone more than enough," he said. "You were selling soap on the street while holding your son's hand. You were sleeping in shelters and still finding ways to create. That's not weakness, Lena. That's strength I've never had to summon." She looked away, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "I don't want pity," she murmured. "You've never had it from me," he said. "Not once." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was layered, full. They weren't the same two people they were weeks ago. "I thought I had to do everything alone," she said after a while, "because every time I trusted someone, it cost me." Trust meant abandonment or betrayal. "I know," he said. "I've lived that too." He stepped closer again, and this time she didn't pull back. "But love," he said, voice lower now, "isn't about doing it all alone. It's about knowing when someone wants to stand with you, not in front of you, not above you, with you." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Lena swallowed hard. "And that's what this is." He nodded. "It always was. Even when I didn't know how to say it." She looked down, then slowly walked past him toward the living room where Eli sat playing. She watched her son's tiny fingers move the car across the carpet, his face lit with quiet joy. "I've seen a lot of men pretend to care," she said softly. "But you sat on a restaurant floor and picked up my soap." Amir moved beside her, his hand close to hers but not touching. "I'd do it again," he said. Finally, she turned to him. "I want to do this on my own. I need to, but I don't want to keep doing it alone." His eyes searched hers. "Then let's build something together," he said. A pause. Not a romantic declaration, not a promise wrapped in fantasy, but something real, tangible, a beginning. "I'm not ready for everything," she confessed. "Not yet." "I'm not asking for everything," he replied. "Just something." Eli, as if sensing the shift in the room, stood up and walked over to them. He looked up at Amir, then at his mother. "Can we stay here tonight?" Lena crouched down and smoothed his hair back. "Only if you want to." He nodded. "I like it here." Amir didn't move, didn't press. He simply waited. Lena looked up at him and whispered, "We'll stay for now." And it was enough. Later that evening, after dinner, Lena sat on the balcony, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, a cup of tea in her hands. The city stretched out before her, endless, humming with life and light. Amir stepped out beside her, carrying a second cup. He handed it to her without a word. They sat in silence again. This time, it wasn't awkward. It was healing. "When I was little," Lena said, "my grandmother used to say that every scar we carry has a name. But love, real love, gives them meaning." Amir didn't speak. He simply placed his hand gently over hers, and she didn't pull away. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe deeply, not just for survival, but for hope. The restaurant looked exactly the same. Crystal chandeliers still glittered from the ceiling, the marble floors still gleamed beneath the golden light, and the scent of roasted meats and aged wine still filled the air. But to Lena, everything felt different. This time, she didn't walk in clutching a box of soap or dragging the weight of rejection on her shoulders. This time, she walked in with her back straight, her eyes steady, and her heart, though still healing, no longer afraid to beat. The hostess recognized her immediately. The young woman's eyes widened, flicking to the reservation book, then to Lena's face again, as if trying to confirm what she was seeing. Lena simply smiled and gave her name. "Yes, of course," the hostess said quickly, recovering her composure. "Mr. Haddad mentioned you'd be arriving." She was led to a small, private table in the corner, near the large window that overlooked the city's skyline. It was the same seat Amir had occupied the day they met, the day he stood up for her when no one else did. Lena placed something small and carefully wrapped in the center of the table, a bar of soap. Handmade, as always, but this one wasn't for sale. It wasn't for pity or survival. It was a message. The scent was warm and complex, amber, honey, and a touch of sandalwood. She'd named it Resilience. The label bore no price, no branding, just one simple line, handwritten in blue ink. "I'm still standing." She didn't know how long she waited. 10 minutes? 20? Maybe more? But she didn't check her phone. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't second-guessing herself. She was ready. When Amir finally arrived, he looked rushed. His tie undone, jacket draped over one arm, hair slightly tousled from the wind. But his eyes lit up the moment he saw her. That same quiet depth, that same softness she'd once feared was just an illusion, was still there. He stopped a few steps from the table, his gaze falling on the soap she'd left in the center. He smiled. "You always did know how to say everything without speaking," he said. Lena rose to greet him, and for a moment neither of them moved to close the distance. Then she took a step forward, just one, and that was enough. He leaned in gently, his hand brushing against her elbow, grounding her without possessing her. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said quietly. "I didn't either," she replied. They sat. The waiter appeared like a shadow, took their orders, and vanished without lingering. It gave them space to say what had gone unsaid for far too long. "I wanted to come back for the right reasons," Lena said. "Not because I needed anything, not because I felt guilty. I came back because I realized something." Amir tilted his head slightly, waiting. She met his gaze without flinching. "You didn't try to rescue me. You just stood beside me until I remembered who I was. I never wanted to be your savior," he said. "I just wanted to be your witness." Lena nodded. Her fingers traced the edge of her napkin. "It's hard to trust that kind of love, when everything in your past tells you that kindness has a cost." "I understand," Amir said. "I've paid that cost too." They shared a look, one that spoke of abandoned childhoods, broken promises, nights spent surviving instead of sleeping. And for the first time, Lena didn't feel ashamed of those things. They weren't her shame to carry. They were her scars, and they had brought her here. "I'm not perfect," she said. "I'm still learning how to believe in stability, in letting someone stay." "I'm not asking for perfect," he said. "I'm asking for real." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "These are orders, real ones, from real customers. No strings, no fake names. Just people who saw my work and believed in it." Amir took the envelope gently, holding it with a reverence she hadn't expected. His voice softened. "You did it." "I am doing it," she corrected, "and I want to keep doing it. But this time, not alone." He looked up at her, something like relief and hope passing across his features. "I want to help," he said, "not with money, with partnership, if you'll let me." Lena hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If we do this, it has to be mine. My name, my product, my story. Always," Amir said. "I'm just the man cheering from the sidelines." They both smiled, tentatively at first, then more freely. Their food arrived. They ate in between soft conversation, easy laughter, and the kind of quiet that doesn't need filling. At one point, Amir reached across the table, and she let him take her hand. It felt natural, unrushed, true. As the night deepened, they talked about the future. A small shop, perhaps. A workshop where Lena could train other women like her. Women who had fallen through the cracks but still had hands ready to create. Amir spoke of connecting her to sustainable suppliers, of branding that reflected her story without selling her pain. But through it all, he deferred to her, always to her. Later, as they stepped out of the restaurant and onto the quiet sidewalk where their story had begun, Lena looked up at the night sky. "It's strange," she said. "This is where I was humiliated, where I thought I'd hit the bottom. And now, it feels like a beginning." Amir nodded. "Sometimes it takes being broken to see what we're really made of." She smiled at him. "Soap and fire," he laughed. "A powerful mix." They walked in silence for a while, side by side, their steps in sync. No longer strangers from different worlds. No longer rescuer and rescued. Just two people who had chosen to meet in the middle of their healing. When they reached the corner where she had once stood shivering, clutching her box, Amir stopped. "Lena," he said softly, "you changed everything." She turned to face him. "So did you." He hesitated, then reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Do you think, maybe, we could try again? For more than just business?" Lena didn't answer right away. She looked at him, then up at the stars. And then, slowly, she leaned forward, closing the space between them not with desperation, but with quiet certainty. Their lips met, tentatively at first, then with the warmth of something earned, not given. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I don't need your money," she whispered, "but I missed your silence, your eyes. Your son misses you too." His arms wrapped around her gently. "You never needed me," he whispered. "I just wanted to stand beside you." And in that moment, the city faded around them. There was no luxury, no shame, no broken pasts clawing at their heels. There was only love, raw, honest, and reborn. What had started on the sidewalk of shame had become a love story not built on fairy tales, but on resilience, on second chances, on forgiveness. And this time, the ending was theirs to write, together. Sometimes, the deepest scars aren't the ones we see, they're the ones we carry in silence. But even in the darkest moments, love, respect, and dignity can rise from the ashes. Have you ever met someone who changed your life when you least expected it? Share your story in the comments. Your voice might be the light someone else needs today. And if this journey moved you, don't stop here. The next story is already on the screen, waiting for you. Click to watch and let yourself feel again.